Aloha, namaste. This is Radha, and I'm here to talk about our full moon. It's happening December 26th, the day after Christmas, at 2:33 p.m. here in Hawaii, which is 4:33 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. This full moon is happening in the star of Ardra. This is a very tumultuous star. This is one of the nakshatras that has the most energy around calamity and really destruction. It's in the galactic plane right across from a star called Mula. And Mula is the root. So it's where we are pulling up from the roots anything that doesn't serve us. And we are sometimes doing this in a very wild and untamed manner. It's ruled by Nariti, who's the goddess of chaos. And she can, get us in a frenzy where we're just like, it's all wrong, and rip it all out. And we have to note where we might just lay waste to things that don't necessarily need to be completely uprooted and take care intending the gaping holes that are left behind when we do this, this wild uprooting. Ardra itself is the moist one, and it refers to a teardrop or a storm. The deity of this star is is Rudra, who's the Howler. He's the fierce form of Shiva, and he, in the story about Rudra, what happens is the creator is, there's actually several stories about him, but one of the more ancient ones from the Vedas, rather than the Puranic tales, is that Brahma, the creator, creates Rudra, and he creates a counterpart for Rudra, Rudrani. And he tells them to multiply. And so they do, and they multiply 11 times. And then he says, go out and do your thing in the world, because there's, an awareness that we need a destructive element in creation. There needs to be creation, there's a sustaining of said creation, and then there's also destruction. And that's how the energy of whatever's out there in the world comes back in to be regenerated again. And so the Rudras and Rudranis go out and they create quite a lot of chaos. They create, volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, tornadoes, hurricanes, poisonous plants, and animals. And Brahma's like, okay, enough. You've destroyed enough of what I've created. Come back. And so he has them move back into the original one Rudra and one Rudrani. And then he tells them to go meditate. And so through this practice, Rudra becomes Shiva, the auspicious one, and Rudrani becomes Parvati, the one who is higher. And they're able to calm their mind. Now, when we think of the fact that Ardra is in Gemini, which is of the mental energy, it's the mind, it's the third house. So it's where we are leaving behind our family values and the security and structure that we've been raised with. And we're going out into the world to find our own way, our own path. And this requires a lot of stopping and starting. It requires, curiosity and the willingness to seek out new ideas and new ways of doing things. And it also shows how what we have in our mind, our thoughts literally create our reality, right? So when we go out and we have this sort of series of poisonous beliefs or thoughts that we have going through our brain, and they move into the next one and the next one and the next one, before we know it, we have a whole image of devastation or horror. We need to pull that back in. And the way to do that is to focus on our on one thing, that following a meditation path of being able to pull the mind into focus on something and eventually merge your mind with that which you are focusing on. And likewise, we can, propagate beautiful feelings and beautiful thoughts and allow ourselves to imagine that the world that we embody and that we live in is full of peace and love and all good things. And since we have a collective consciousness as well, it's not just our little individual boats floating around. We have to reckon with the entire collective. It's in our best interest to continue to uplift one another rather than kind of tearing each other down or creating more division. Ultimately, the division is what allows us to see things and make things happen in the world that we're living. But we need to always remember in the back of our mind that the truth is cohesion or oneness and not separation, not separate identities. So anything we're doing to anyone else, we're doing also to ourselves. And anything we think of someone else is also somewhere embedded in our own mind that exists. And we wouldn't really be able to see it otherwise. You know, we wouldn't be able to see that reflection in someone else. Just like if we see somebody as beautiful or we look up to them or we think that their ideals and thoughts and philosophies are amazing, that's also a reflection of ourselves. And so this is the nature of our mind. And we do have a tendency to harbor on things that are negative or dark and need to bring ourselves back with very specific practices that help us do that, whether it's, a traditional yogic path or whether we're finding ways to be meditative in our life. Some people have a very hard time sitting still. You can focus on your breath. You can do movement meditation, while you're practicing something that works for you, whether that's walking or hiking, or whether that's something like surfing. Anywhere where you focus your mind on something is going to help bring you to a state of peace, which is why so many people do enjoy different physical exercises and things or sports that really allow them to just, center themselves on something precise and leave everything else in the world behind. So I'm going to share my screen and show us our chart because it's much easier to talk about what's happening when I look at it. This is kind of a big full moon, right? We have a lot of change that's been happening. Not only is it on this galactic plane, but it's also joined Mercury retrograde. And Mercury's in the same star of Mula. And I spoke a little bit about this star when I was talking about Mercury retrograde 2 weeks ago in my new moon video. This is a time for us to really revisit what our thinking process is. How is our discernment, right? It's easy to think like, well, we could propagate bad thoughts or good thoughts, but what is it that is at the root of what our thoughts come from? Well, when Mercury's in Sagittarius, what we're reckoning with is confirmation bias, right? We're reckoning with the fact that we have certain instilled beliefs that come from society, that come from our parents, that come from our upbringing, and that come from our own path and experiences and trajectory in the world. Just even looking at someone's chart, you can see kind of what their tendencies are as far as what they believe. Well, that's good. Last year, we had Mercury retrograde in the same place. It went into Capricorn. It was in Capricorn, it went back into Sagittarius and then went into Capricorn again. Well, now we're having the situation where it's starting in Sagittarius and moving back into Scorpio and then going to move forward into Sagittarius again. So it's really asking us to revisit those beliefs because our capacity to discern what is true or is not true is fundamentally ruled by our beliefs. You can see that in any given argument that might be going on right now on the world stage or on your internet feed. Your beliefs dictate what you discern to be true, what information you're willing to take in, what information you then want to dispense out again, what news sources you pay attention to. What you believe is so fundamental to what you think. And this time we're going even deeper, right? On the 27th, the day after the full moon, we're going to have Mercury drop into, and look, there's actually a brief moment here where Mercury and Mars are together. But then we can see that Mercury will move later on the 27th. So 7:33 p.m. Hawaii time, I have it here, but I did it just by hours. I didn't get the precise time. But by the evening here in Hawaii and later evening Pacific time, we will have Mercury then move into Scorpio, where we're being tasked with going deeper than just our belief systems that we were raised with. We're going to actually have to dive into the traumas and dramas that even created these belief systems to begin with. And they're not just personal, right? These are collective things. These are based in our lineage. These are based in our communities and the societies we grew up in, and they're sort of shared by the whole world at this point. We've all been living in this dark period for a long, long time, and we've carried a lot of wounds from that. And those wounds give us our beliefs, and our beliefs give us our thoughts, and our thoughts give us our communication and our capacity to envision a different world. And so this is really important to look at. And of course, we can't do it for everyone. We can only do it for ourselves, right? We can shine light, and maybe someone else sees our light and follows, but we can't really do the work for anyone else. And the more we point out other people's shadows, usually the less they want to listen to us. So really tuning into ourselves here is going to be key. Finding the part of ourself that is traumatized and that does have deep fear, because ultimately that reptilian brain of fight or flight is running so much of the show. And we can, put pretty bows on it and decorate it and make it seem like it's different. But really so much of what we are communicating about and even understanding in the world is coming from this deep rooted fear that we have. And it's basic survival. It's being cast out or left alone. It's being, it's dying. And not understanding the ways in which our energy transforms after that death. It's holding death to be an end and not also a beginning. So I'm going to backtrack here. You can see, Venus is here, but she moved on the 24th. But I'm going to backtrack to this point where we had the two together, Mars and Mercury, exactly. And the time period of this is like 2:17 to 2:44 p.m. is when we're going to have these two exact. So for that period of time on the 27th, you can imagine that Mars is going to be bringing some pretty intense anger into the picture. We're talking about Mula, Nariti, uprooting chaos. And here we have anger, our planet of anger moving in. And while Mars does very well in both Scorpio and Sagittarius, we have a lot of capacity for courage, a lot of capacity for discipline, and a lot of capacity for action. This destabilization of moving signs is big, particularly here, because this is what we call the Gandanta point. Between the water signs and the fire signs is a chasm. It's a karmic knot. I mean, the Gandanta itself, it means that, it means a knot, but it's also a chasm. It's a place where we don't have anything helping us get from one point to the other. So we're needing to cross it, usually by not untying the knot, usually not in this complex way of untying the knot, because the knot has us stuck. We have a hard time jumping from our fears into our beliefs. There's a disconnect. There's a place where we're not sure anymore. We got there with our fears, and now we're kind of waiting for the download of how our beliefs are formed. And crossing over this point can be very, very unsettling, particularly this one as we're reckoning with Mula, and we already have Mercury crossing over the point. So we have both of these planets. Mars is going forward into Sagittarius from Scorpio, and Mercury is retrograding back. And will, of course, forward go back over it again on the 7th of January. So this is a very intense little moment that we're reckoning here with not just our fear, but also our anger, the way in which our fear sort of elicits anger out of us in an attempt to protect ourselves. We are angry at anything we view as potentially hurting us. And we become very like cutting. We are so focused on our own individual existence that we are not as able to be connective. And that's how Mars comes off as so cutting or harsh or angry. And Mars is also very black and white. Mars is like this or this. Well, you can imagine in the flexible needs of our beliefs and our communication and our discernment, we need to be able to take in new information and assimilate it. So this exact moment can be a kind of like a breaking point of like, this is the way it is. And it's so hard and it's so painful that we might really hang on. And more than likely some outside force will kind of disrupt it to such a degree where we can't hold on any longer, where we need to walk through this very painful chasm in order to arrive where we can feel very solid in our beliefs and truly understand them, not just on an intellectual level, but in that deeper place where our wounds reside, where our shadows are, and where our fears are. So this is going to be a very interesting moment in time that we're here. It's like the full moon, and then it's moving into this intense Mars-Mercury conjunction, and then Mercury will be, I mean, Mars will solidly be in Sagittarius soon after. Mercury will then be in Scorpio until the 2nd. I think it's the 2nd, and then he goes direct again on the 2nd. Is it the 2nd or is it the 3rd? I think it's on the 2nd that on the 1st or the 2nd. Actually, maybe it's the 1st. Yeah. So on the 1st, he goes direct. Right. In the afternoon on the 1st, Mercury begins direct motion again. And then he's in Scorpio, still forward moving until the 7th. So this forward moving, it's like we're rewinding in the retrograde moment and really thinking about what is true and allowing ourselves to hopefully listen, not just to others, but to our own self and our own inner voices. And then the forward motion gives us an opportunity to put it in play, to really allow our thoughts to form and our communication to shift. And of course, this is going to be really different for each of us based on what rising sign we have. You know, for somebody who's a Gemini or Virgo, Mercury's your ruling planet. So this is a big deal. You're going, it's like communicating with others for Gemini people, or communicating what feels good in your heart for Virgo people. And then it's going back into this like hard work, and the hard work of feeling your emotions and dealing with your shadows. For Virgo people, it'll be more about the will and the struggle of their will, and how so much of maybe what they're trying to will forward can come from their fears. So it's going to be really different for those people. And then for Jupiter people, it's going to have to do with their relationship to other people also, because Mercury's ruling other people for them. For each of us, it'll be different. And I do these breakdowns for my Patreon group, Cosmically Aligned, because it's so important to understand what everything's ruling for you. Mars rules something specific for you. For Aries and Scorpio, Mars is your ruling planet. For Venus ruled people, Taurus and Libra, it's your 7th lord, has to do with your relationship. So for those people, there's a lot going on with relationships and all of this. But for other people, it won't have as much to do with relationships. For Saturn ruled people or Cancer or Leo people, it's not really going to affect relationships quite as much. So this is the work, to really understand not only how everyone collectively is holding something, but also what your individual path with it is and how you're showing up right now in your world. So I'm going to bring us back to Venus really quick, and then I'm going to end this. On the 24th, Venus moves into Scorpio from Libra. So on Christmas Eve, the day before Christmas, and Mars is still here, but the degrees are quite far away from each other. This is going to really shift our relationship dynamic as well. Venus has been in Libra. So despite all the other things going on, the retrograding and all the discomfort we might have been feeling in other areas, we've had this very strong capacity and desire to connect and get along with other people. And that's been sort of carrying us through. And we've had Venus in her own sign, Mars in his own sign, and Saturn in his own sign, and Saturn and Mars in this sort of mutual drishti, this mutual gaze. Well, now Venus is moving into Scorpio. We might feel a little bit suspicious in our relationships, or a little bit like the fear coming up of particularly of like being left, and have that start to equate to more controlling behavior or striking first, the Scorpion energy of feeling your vulnerability and lashing out at others so that you don't get hurt first. This can also be a time of really deep empathy and compassion for ourselves and others in relationship, really doing that shadow work, really looking at our wounds and how they affect the ways in which we relate to one another or even choose who we relate to, and how those deeper traumas and fears affect our capacity to be happy, not just in relationship, but in life in general. And so this is another element we're bringing into the picture now, and it can get a little messy for sure. This can be a time of messiness, particularly if you've already been struggling. You know, if your relationships have already been having some difficulty, this is really going to bring it all to the surface for better or worse. If if you're not in a particular relationship, or you're maybe in a newer phase of it or something like that, it might not be quite as deep, because we don't tend to go as deep with people we don't know as well. But like I said, it can affect a different area of your life too. This can, for some people, it's going to affect their career, their status, their reputation, their home life. So it's really important to understand how this is running for you in particular. And I am going to offer this breakdown for all 12 signs on my Patreon group. So if you haven't yet signed up, you can go to Rudra Home Astrology on the Patreon group and check out what it means for you specifically. I'm also running a 22% off discount on all my readings until the end of the year. So anything booked before December 31st is going to have this discount applied. You can reach out to me personally, or you can go to my website, radahomeastrology.com, and book. If there aren't slots that work for you, you can reach out to me. I might be able to make something work. The holiday season's been a little bit different with my scheduling as it is. I wish you a really blessed holiday season. If you celebrate Christmas, Merry Christmas. Blessed solstice that we all just walked through. And for all of us, I really pray that we are able to find the roots of our discernment and really uncover our unconscious patterns and beliefs, because they're holding us back from really being able to embrace what's possible in the world and in our own lives. And it's this crux. We're in this crucial moment where the time is now, and we've got this. So, namaste.